Welcome to the first episode of the Loadout Music Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Hurlett, and we're coming to you live from the Gaslight in St. Louis, Missouri. You know, what we're hoping to deliver through the Loadout is an ongoing series of intimate conversations with emerging and established musicians in a variety of genres.
'Cause I'm always locked and loaded. Tell them what you think about it, Mickey. Time to pull that trigger.
Popular country music has dramatically evolved over the past 50 years in a format once dominated by the likes of Merle Haggard, George Jones, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, and others. Today it's become more of a pop music medium. But if there are heir apparents to the likes of Jennings, Hank Williams Jr., and David Allan Coe, it's artists like Cody Jinks, Chris Knight, Jamey Johnson, and the man who I am thrilled and honored to have as our first guest on the Loadout podcast, Mr. Mickey Lamantia. Mickey, thanks so much for being with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, brother. I've been looking forward to it all weekend.
So, because of what I noted in the introduction, and really kind of the scarcity of artists playing music like yours today on popular radio. There's probably a lot of people, unless you're kind of a hardcore outlaw country fan, who don't know who you are. And so, I'd love to spend some time really introducing you to our audience and, just talk about where you're from. So if we could start with that, where you grew up, it'd be great.
Well, I'm from up in New England. I'm a Pats fan. So right off the rip right there, that's probably another thing that's not in my favor. But I'm from Cranston, Rhode Island. Smallest state in the union, and I've been playing country music since I was a kid, so it's pretty much all I know.
How do you I don't think most people equate New England, Rhode Island with country music. So you're a kid growing up. How do you really discover country music? What was the first time you heard Loretta Lynn or George Jones? How does that get introduced to you?
Well, I heard before I heard any of them names, I heard my uncle Leroy Matitol, and he had a band that played local up here in Rhode Island. And when I say he was as good as Waylon and George Jones, and I mean he probably should have been a superstar. But being from Rhode Island back, like you said, things evolve. Like the internet has evolved. There was no way for him to get around like there is for me to channel the waves, as to say, so I can get my name out there a little bit more than he could back in the day. So then from listening to him, he listened to Waylon, George. My parents listened to all those guys, and one of my first records I really liked, knew all the words to, was Ricky Skaggs' album, "Crying My Heart Out Over You," I think the name of it was.
So your uncle introduces this to you, and at what age do you pick up guitar and you've got this great baritone voice, but at what time do you discover I'm going to start playing guitar, I'm going to start using this voice and start creating some art?
Well, I started playing at a young age, taking lessons, and then playing basketball and baseball, and kind of hiding it from my friends because it's probably not that cool to like country music up here. And then probably about, I start playing with his band around 16 in the bars. And I get up, do a couple songs, and then, it goes well. And then I end up, he sits for a whole set and I end up playing for a set. And then it just carried on from there. And, it kind of took off a little bit for me at a young age. By 21, I had got discovered singing a Randy Travis song. I think I was singing karaoke at a bar, and I was doing "Forever Amen." And next thing I know, 2 months later, I'm opening up shows for Willie Nelson all around New England. And that's when I knew that I had the voice for it. And but life kind of took over because I didn't make it then, and I went on to live a life. And then just recently, about 8 years ago, I just started writing songs, so that propelled me back into the music business.
So, what is that? You're 22 years old, and someone says to you, "Hey, we'd like you to open up for Willie Nelson." It's not like you're saying Willie who. I mean,
I knew Willie.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. I would imagine I'd be like, I can't believe this is happening to me. What is that like?
It was tremendous. It was great. I mean, and that almost turned into a big thing. Like, I became very friendly with some of Willie's guys. Paul English, his drummer. Um, Pootie was his tour manager at the time, and he told me, he said, "Listen, the band doesn't come out and usually watch the opening act play, but we were playing like these tent circles back in the day. Those were pretty popular, where the stage rotates, and they were at the top watching all our shows. So we almost got invited out to play on some more on the road." But my band guys at the time had full-time jobs, and I had a contract here with management, and it just didn't work out. So, but Willie was very gracious, and his band guys, from Jody to Grady Martin, Paul English, and especially Pootie. I love to mention Pootie because to me, he was the glue that held all that whole group together. As the road manager.
So how do you? I mean, you've got this, a dream of a young man right there sitting in front of you, and life gets in the way. How do you reconcile that? I mean, when you're 22 and you get invited to go do more, and I mean that's got to be frustrating for you.
Well, it was a pretty cool time. I got to meet the likes of Randy Travis, Reed McIntyre, George Strait. Anybody that came in because I got to do all that stuff, I got to take pictures with, and I was playing my shows on the side, and at 26 I opened for Tanya Tucker, so maybe it was 25, so a few years later after that I got to do that, and then I ended up getting a full-time job working at the prison. So I've been a correctional officer for the past 23 years.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that it's not a common story you hear, that someone who plays the kind of music you play to the level of excellence you play it, that you've got a day job. And my understanding was from what I understand, you had long dreamed of being working in law enforcement. That was something you were passionate about and really wanted to pursue. And was that one of the things that kind of, when I said earlier, life got in the way, that your professional passion in pursuing just working in some level of law enforcement?
Well, there was two things I always wanted to be, was a country music singer or a police officer. And I did the correctional officer thing, and then about 35 I actually quit, and I was a cop down in Florida for a year, and then I had a real bad back injury, and I ended up coming back to the prison, where I've been since. And it's funny because if that didn't happen, I'd still probably be a cop down in Florida. And, I ended up hearing a guy named Jamey Johnson, singing a song called In Color back in, 09-ish or whatever, 010, 2010, around that time, started listening to Jamey, and I ended up writing a dash, I think, probably 2011. And I thought, wow, he really inspired me to write music. And I said, I'm getting older, maybe I could write songs for other artists, So I really dug into learning how to write songs off of life experiences.
Yeah, for those who again, Jamey Johnson is another one of those artists that you're not going to hear on traditional country radio. And I've had the good fortune of seeing him. I actually saw him play at an event honoring a Navy SEAL who was awarded a Medal of Honor, and it was an absolute thrill to be able to see him in a decent sized room, but a very small crowd. And Jamey Johnson is an amazing artist, and you guys have certainly similar style, similar voices. But you can tell that the content of what you're writing about is certainly informed from different places. But Jamey Johnson was also a Marine, worked in some level in law enforcement. Talk a little bit about country radio today, and half of the battle. There's so many talented artists out there, and largely it comes down to a question of visibility. And, does that talk a little bit about just your experience in the industry with particularly radio, because that tended to be historically was the primary medium to really get your voice, get your message out, and just your experience with that.
Well, I think it still is. There was a little time there that I was like, hey, screw radio, I don't need radio, and a lot of artists like myself were saying the same thing. But, my thought has kind of changed on that. I think that, you still need some form of radio to get your name out there. We also have the internet, which has played a big role for me because I haven't quit my job. I've kept my job and maintained a musical career, which is pretty much unheard of, at the level that I'm at. Probably, most people think that I'd quit and gone on to music full time, but even guys I work with are like, "You still work here?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm still working here." But I think that radio plays a role. I work with CDX out of Nashville, Joe Kelly, and they send my music out to. Right now, we work secondary radio because you're never going to get any playtime on the big stations in the big cities. Those are occupied by record labels, by the big corporations that own those stations.
Sure, the iHeart radios of the world.
And those DJs don't have any choice in what to play. Even if they know who Mickey Lamantia is and they like Mickey Lamantia, or they want to play Jamey Johnson, he might have more of a shot, obviously, of getting played than I will. But they're still not playing all the Stapleton stuff on the radio, and he's probably closer to the mold of fitting in. But I think it's important. I think that every outlet you can use is important, but I still think two things factor in. I think it's money. You need money, and you need to know somebody. Eventually, somebody has to give you a hand up and say, "Hey, I like what you're doing, and I'm going to give you a hand." And so I think those are two big combinations. And, as far as the pop stuff, I used to bash it a lot. And, those guys are talented too in their own right. I don't like the watered down country songs, but I'm not saying there's not a place for that either. I think that there's a place for both to have two different genres of country music. And I think it's important that they realize that they should have that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you in terms of there are plenty of talented guys out there, but and women that are playing on those popular country stations. But to me, it's more the labels in that what you hear in some of those stations we were talking about is more it's pop music, pop country, whereas the music you're playing is more akin to older school country music, Southern rock, guys.
Yeah, real country music.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, if it wasn't for serious outlaw country, I don't know that I heard you on a couple years ago. That's where I first discovered you, and it's a credit to I guess actually Little Steven Van Zandt actually started that station because I heard him interviewed about this. He wanted to hear a station where you could hear all three Hanks. Is the way he described it, which I thought was a really interesting way to think about what Sirius Outlaw Radio plays. because there's kind of more modern alt country but going all the way back to Hank Sr. to Hank Jr. and everything in between. Let's talk a little. I don't want to breeze over kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis, because I think it's an important part of who you are, and I know that from listening to your songs, it informs a lot of your songwriting. So, talk a little bit about your profession, your day job, and just what is it like being a prison guard every day?
Well, listen, you're one person and you walk into a block with 158 inmates, 90, half of which, my math ain't that good, but half of which come out at a time, and it's like, I think the ratio is something like 90-1 or 75, whatever it is. And people sometimes think that you go in with a gun, or I don't carry anything with me when I don't have pepper spray. I don't have a baton. There's no gun. It's you go in and you tell 90 grown men what to do, or 158 on a daily basis. And you walk into these blocks, and you're not the toughest guy in there. There's always somebody that's tougher than you, but you're not going to back down from not one person in that block. And if they know that, you get their respect. You might not win, but you'll have their respect, and then they won't test you as much, But they also know that they'll lose in the long run too. So I it's learning how to talk to people. I don't go in there and think that everybody that's in there is a real bad person. Somebody could be in there for a DUI, or and get mixed in with someone who's in there for murder, or it could be a kid who's got some drug problems. So you can't go in there and think that everybody is just an evil person either. But not everybody's an angel either. So it's a tough balance of deciphering who's who and being a good judge of character, which has helped me in the music business, on reading out people or weeding out people, so as not to get burnt, So being a correctional officer is very tough, and I give credit to everybody that I work with that goes in there on a day-to-day basis. They risk their life every day.
I imagine that you in no way want it, seek it, crave it, but do you find that even inside where you work, the exposure that you have gotten as a country music singer has given you an unusual cachet, almost a celebrity to those inmates, or do they not know anything about that, or really don't give a shit?
They do. They're not country music fans per se up this way, but they always ask. Officers play the music in the van sometimes, and they hear it, and they'll be like, "Yeah, that's Lamantia." They know what's going on. So, even like with the song I wrote, "Locked and Loaded," I did an interview on the Boston Globe, and they asked me about a line in there, and I had said, they said, "What'd you mean by, you'd rather be judged by 12 or carried by 6?" And, basically, I'll repeat it because I feel sometimes it's a true emotion. When you're surrounded by 56 people that have either hurt children or molested or killed children, sometimes you'd like to be locked and loaded, but you can't do that. You have to walk in there. I'll probably get called in again for saying that, but it's the truth. I can't stand people that hurt kids, and that I put it in the music. Music's a vent for me.
Do you find that because of those experiences, we all create art from a very emotional, personal place. Can it be almost exhausting emotionally exhausting when you're writing a song and you're kind of going into that deep well of your experiences because those experiences that you're drawing from are unusual in terms of the way they are just kind of,
there's so many emotions that one person can have, and anybody that's worth their weight as a songwriter taps into all their emotions. So at any given moment, I can be a tough guy. I can be a dad to my little girl and be soft. And I mean, it's just so many emotions that you can draw from. And sometimes it's very exhausting and overwhelming. I feel like I could write, and I don't sit down and write every day, but I certainly feel like I can write a good song every time out of the gate. Like, I get these ideas constantly. Like, my mind is like thinking about, what song do I want to touch on, next, or, so I definitely feel sometimes it's overwhelming, the amount of emotion that goes through one person's head, like sometimes I feel like it's going to explode,
Let's talk a little more about your songwriting process. So, since you don't write every day, and do you find that oftentimes you are struck by a specific situation and you think to yourself, I see a narrative here for a song, whether it's those words or not, but I see something here that's sparking an idea. Is that how oftentimes it works for you?
Well, I'll hear things, there's different phrases like, so, outlaw life was so misunderstood when I wrote it. Like people thought, oh, this guy thinks he's an outlaw, so he wrote this song Outlaw Life, and I get some criticism for that, and I said, well, you're not listening to the song and you're not understanding it, because it's trying to say, if you're going to live an outlaw life like Waylon and Willie did, or like a person who's not just a musical outlaw, but a real outlaw in life, like that breaks the law and challenges the limits, you're not going to live very long, trying to live this outlaw life. I mean, it's just like, it wears on your emotions, so I don't consider myself to be an outlaw. I think that I play honky tonk music. I play classic country music. I didn't set out to be the next David Allan Coe, nor do I ever want to be. I'd be lucky to have that kind of status, because I look up to David Allan Coe as an artist. But trust me, I'd rather be more like a Randy Travis or Jamey Johnson, or I don't want to be sitting here telling you, hey, I killed a guy in prison or did some other things in there that I'm not out to be the next outlaw.
Yeah.
So that song there was, I think, just misconstrued. But you know what? Now everybody's caught on to it. It's getting 2,000 plus streams every day on Spotify alone, and it's doing well on all the other channels. So it's finally, I'm like, wow, it just kicked in, man, and it's getting the recognition that it deserves, and that's like 3 years later after I wrote it.
It's interesting when I think of a song like Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. On one hand, it's got kind of the similar themes that have always kind of perpetuated country music, but on the other hand, I hear a very kind of deep political intent that you're trying to express, and actually throughout that entire record, you're talking a lot about kind of, to me at least, what I hear is government intervention and almost a libertarian kind of viewpoint where, we need to be able to continue to enjoy our freedoms that we always have, and we're starting to see, those being tread on. Is that does any of your political beliefs tend to inform some of your songwriting?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big Second Amendment person, and and I probably write, you got ATF, you get Locked and Loaded, and there's several other songs probably which I mentioned, the Second Amendment, but I try not to get political because I've been learning this, that the only thing it does, if I come out and everybody knows where I'm coming from anyway because of my music. If I just keep coming out and saying, hey, the left is this, the left is that, well, that's only hurting me. And I think everybody has an opinion. Um, but there's definitely some intent in the songwriting. Um, there's definitely some intent in that song.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you actually feel it throughout that entire record, and clearly some of your other records. I want to get back to your music, but I want to touch on one other thing that I think is important for our listeners to know about. My understanding is that family and the stability of your family is really important to you, and in fact, it's actually played a role in not being on the road too much. And in fact, what I was told was that family is absolutely first for you. It's not career, it's not your music. It is making sure that you've got stability in your family. I know you have a wife and 2 kids. Talk a little bit about that, and then also just how it informs who you are as a human being.
Well, listen, I think any dad worth their weight is going to say, my kids come first. Do I think that I could be out there touring and be successful and bet on myself and have a 95% chance of being successful? Yeah, I really believe that with the musical content that I've got and the songs that I've written. But I'm not going to go until, either God pushes me out there to do it, or someone reaches out a hand and says, hey, this is, and then it makes it look a little clearer the path. Because I'm not going to put my kids' future at jeopardy and fail at it. And, I do have a good job. It's not like I don't have a job, but I'm 19, 20 years old and just saying, let me go down and kick it on Broadway down in Nashville. Um, I'm I'm 49. So what are the chances of a 49-year-old guy, breaking through? They're probably slightly better for me because of the kind of music I do. But at the same time, I'm not going to risk my kids' future. And I think sometimes that's a knock on me from in the music industry because people will say, yeah, he's doing this and doing that. And they wonder how I maybe get so many streams or so many followers without touring. But I've used every nook and cranny that I could to muster up the Facebook following or the Instagram following, or I did Whiskey Wednesday shows for 3 years, building up the whole ML 750 brand that I put out there. But I'm just waiting for that right time, and then man, I'm gonna be all over it.
But it's an interesting distinction in that, with the economics of the music industry today, whereas there used to be a lot of money in records, today the money's in the touring. And, so it's to a degree, it's a sacrifice you're making for the stability of your family and instead of getting on the road where a lot of the money can be made today.
Yeah, but I'm making good money on a day job that's more stable than starting out and going. Let me tell you, I got signed by a booking agent, and I won't name which one, but I was making $150 to go open shows in different, like Oklahoma, Kansas. So think about that. $150 plus what I sold in merch. By the time I was done with the week, I had lost $1,500. So there's no way that you could sustain that.
Yeah.
And being a new guy, I asked about the pay, and I was basically told it's whatever the headliner wants to pay you. And I guess the headliner didn't want to pay too much. But so you have to build it strategically. Jamey Johnson did it the best, and I do look at that as a model of what I want to do. But he also had a little bit of major radio play at the beginning, with and then he developed all that and took that and very wisely developed a cult following, which he sells out everywhere he goes, and that's what I'm looking to do. So, but we had some good music coming out, so just watch what happens this year. I mean, I'm just totally psyched about what's coming out.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, because I know that you've been kind of in this unusual sprint over the past couple months, and you're about to drop some new music in late March. But instead of putting it all into kind of one formal record or even a double album, you've been kind of slowly dropping music, which is becoming it's becoming a new strategy across the industry, across genres. Talk a little bit about what you've been doing and some of the new music you've been dropping and will drop.
Well, like you said, you've seen a couple people doing double albums. People tend to look at your album and then a month or two later forget about your album. Might be on some stream list, might not be. I don't, whatever. You drop a single, you go away even quicker. That's what singles are for big radio. To me, they're for big radio people like Taylor Swift or whoever's getting that big radio play. Albums are for independent artists, because they got to get content. The more content you have out there, the better. And if it's successful content, and people look at it and go, "Wow, this guy's written a very good amount of songs that are really top quality," then I think that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and the record labels could take a look at you like they did with Tyler Childers and say, "Hey, we're going to partner up with you," or Cody Johnson partnering up. You don't necessarily have to sell your soul to, work with a record label. You don't have to work with a record label. You can tour and make money that way too. So I decided, I ended up getting with a backer and a business partner, and we just decided to get as much content recorded last fall after we dropped the last album that we put out, How Far Would I Fall? And so now we have 24 songs to release, and I'm like, well, how should we do it? So I'm like, well, let's do 6 songs over 3 months and just stay in everybody's face for 6 months. And the reason I was able to do that is because we had Randy Travis came in the studio last fall. Me and Melanie Cannon were in there, and I don't know if you heard the song that we cut. How Far Would I Fall? She sang. It was a duet between me and Melanie.
Yep.
And we decided to do some more work together, so we did. And Randy Travis came in, and we cut Promises on the spot with Randy Travis in the studio, and it was the most amazing experience ever. And when we got done cutting it, we sat around with guitars and we played. I played Digging Up Bones. We had the harp going. Randy was loving it. We just had a great time. We drank some wine. Randy Travis likes to have a little wine, and it was such a good time. Well, next thing you know, my producer sends some of the video over to Paul Overstreet, and Paul Overstreet sends over 3 songs. And I'm like, well, I go through, actually it was about 7, but we narrowed it down to 3. And then I got friendly a little bit with Buddy Cannon. He sent over a song that he and Dean Dillon had recorded. So we got one of those songs coming. And then I co-wrote one with Buddy, and Joe Doyle, who had a #1 hit with Alabama, in Pitcher. He's written for Reed McIntyre, Kenny Rogers, Jason Aldean, big songwriter. He wrote 23rd Psalm, and he just gave me a new one called Boy in the Water, which is incredible, by the way. It's going to probably, if I was with a label, it would be a number one hit. It's a smash song. But so I've got songs by other songwriters too, and then I got about 18 of my own that we cut. So
A lot of music.
very excited. A lot
Yeah.
of music, and we're gonna just get it out there.
How do you I mean, that's got to be a kind of a strange twist for you, because you were saying earlier how you were interested in maybe starting to write songs for other people, but when you start having accomplished songwriters send you music because they hear you, they hear your voice, and they feel like they want to, give you their piece of art to bring to life. What's that? What is that like? I mean, that must be a great feeling.
It's so humbling. Uh, it's unbelievable to. How would you ever say no to a Paul Overstreet or a Buddy Cannon? I mean, they're legends in the business. It's overwhelming to even think that someone like that would have something to do with someone like me, and it's so cool because I'm going to Nashville tomorrow, and I'm gonna I'm gonna go to the Jamey Stapleton show for Robbie Turner, who had played on my Every Bad Habit album. He had a car accident, and they're doing a benefit, and it's gonna be awesome in a small venue. But I'm gonna meet with Buddy Cannon down. He invited me to his office, and we got some other meetings lined up, and it's just incredible that those guys would think that I sing good enough to give me their music.
Yeah,
I'm
it's a remarkable. It must be a warm feeling.
and no one really was really cutting my songs, so I mean I don't have nobody to pitch them to. So you know,
Well, that could
we
change
just
though. It could change in a
well,
heartbeat.
we hope so, and I mean look at Every Bad Habit, The Dash, ATF. I mean we got some great stuff, but if you're not with a publishing company, no one's pitching those songs. It's up to you guys like you hear them on Sirius XM or online or YouTube or wherever, and you hope that you get that hand up from somebody. And I've been fortunate enough with to have Melanie Cannon really give me that hand up. She by singing with me on the album, I think, and that was huge. And we peaked at we hit 73. I think it was on Music Row chart, which is in the that gets sent out to everybody. So now your name is, you know, amongst the record labels, and we're we're just like in a good position to release music. All by My Lonesome is the radio single that just went out to radio. That's written by Paul Overstreet, and released Buddy Cannon's Love Triangle, which had never been cut. It was written by him and Ronnie Rogers, who wrote Dixieland Delight. And the cut of Dean Dillon song and Buddy Cannon song, that's just absolutely out of this world.
Yeah,
So
that's fantastic. It's interesting. Nashville has such a fascinating culture in that, and Chris Stapleton's talked about doing this after, he dropped out of college and he didn't know there was jobs as just being a songwriter for other people. And, it seems like Nashville has buildings where they just got rows of people that all they do is churning out songs for other people. And it's an interesting cottage industry the way it's lined up there. So when you record, do you record most of your music in Nashville, or do you record elsewhere?
no, I go down to most of the time I either record at Omni Studio in Nashville or at Benchmark. And I mean, there's a lot of history in both.
Mm.
Um, I found Bill McDermott is my producer, and he's worked with a lot of big names. So we're just trying to take this as far as we can together. And he's a great guy and does really, really, really good work. We found a sound that, I didn't want to come out with a sound like Jamey, but I didn't want to sound like Stapleton or Randy Travis. I said I'd like to sound somewhere in the middle, and I think we found that. So I'm very happy with you have to. I think you have to. You don't have to record there. I mean, obviously Sturgill says no, you don't. He's all over the news, but to me, I
Sturgill
think
loves to bash bash Music Row, and
you can bash it all you want, but let me tell you something. Nashville's where Nashville. Let's take Nashville back. Let's
Yeah.
not. It's not Nashville. It's the corporate part of it. It's let's get back to where it was. I mean, you get down there at any time. There's 20 cranes building apartments. They're changing the whole atmosphere. So instead of those little houses being songwriting houses, now it's corporate offices that they're going in. You got 6 or 7 songwriters in a song. I think the art of writing a song is been misplaced from 1 or 2 guys to 5 or 6 guys, and the quality of the songs definitely show that it's not coming from one person or 2 people. It's I think the quality is way down on songwriting.
Yeah, and yet there's still some good artists there. I mean, and you're seeing an interesting diversity of the music that's coming out of Nashville. For instance, I'm going this Thursday to see the Warren Treaty, which is a couple that kind of comes out of soul music from churches, but they've infused some country and Americana and even a little bluegrass into their music, and they're playing at the Ryman, at the Ryman this week, and seeing them on Thursday, and it is interesting to see. There's been, I think, positives and negatives to what's happened in Nashville. I do agree with you in that I think the corporate influence has really been kind of the challenges for the industry and almost what's been sullying it and creating to a degree kind of a sellout environment. And you mentioned this earlier, the evolution of Sturgill Simpson's sound. His last, I still don't know. I've listened to his last record dozens and dozens of times, and to me, it sounds like something Pink Floyd might have made in the late '70s. It's a very unique record, and he's obviously taken a real unique road to where he's going.
Well, I think that he had a certain amount of albums to plan to do, and I think that he's almost at the pinnacle. I don't know how many more he's gonna do.
Yeah.
But I think that he makes a lot of sense in this regard. That if you're going to move to Nashville, don't expect to make it big just by playing down in Nashville. I'm not knocking anybody that goes down there and plays on Broadway or whatever. You got to find your niche, but to make any money, you have to get out on the road. You have to. If I was going to do it as a 25-year-old person and I wasn't married with 2 kids, I'd go get a van and a trailer, and I'd start looking for a booking agent, and I would travel around the country and build a fan base. It's the old style way. A lot of guys have done it that way, and I have the ultimate respect for those people. So he's right in that sense, but yet he still went to Nashville, and so in the sense he's saying he didn't, he still went to Nashville to be Sturgill Simpson,
Yeah, and I mean,
So
look, the guy's he's a remarkably talented guy. He's
yes, absolutely.
yeah. I mean, I've got you can't help but love that. Love whatever he touches to a degree, and I love where he informs his music. It's all over the place. I mean, it's he's talked about loving Frank Ocean and his music to some of the more traditionalist country musicians that you and I were talking about earlier. Let me pivot a little bit. You mentioned Whiskey Wednesdays earlier, and you've built up I think a really unique Facebook presence because you've spent so much time doing the Whiskey Wednesdays, and you spend so much time performing on Facebook for it, really creating a two-way relationship with your audience. Talk a little bit about that because it's really terrific for anyone who's not experienced it.
Well, I think we were the first one to do a Facebook Live every week, and we were just sitting around drinking whiskey one night, and I said, "I'll go live, see what this new thing is." And I said, "Well, let's do this every week. Let's do a different whiskey, and we'll call it Whiskey Wednesday." And at the time, obviously, I had Thursdays off, so it worked out well. But so we did, and then I found a Rhode Island-based whiskey that we tried, Sons of Liberty, and I'm like, I think I'm going to try to get a deal with them to sponsor it. And I think I'm going to try to brand myself ML 750, which is, the 750 milliliters in a bottle of whiskey. And just my initials are ML, so we just turned it around and we went in there with that brand, and we ended up with the whiskey deal with Sons of Liberty. They sponsored the Whiskey Wednesdays and some other things, and they helped us out the music, and it's been a great relationship ever since. As for me, I could spend an hour or two or three on Facebook on Wednesday nights, and we had, I think, at the most 40,000 views on a Wednesday night. And but even now, like by Thursday, I get 10 to 15,000.
Oh yeah, normally it's somewhere close to 20,000. I mean, I've seen between 10 and 20 on a pretty regular basis. It's
so
impressive.
That's like a stadium without leaving the house, but I'm just not getting paid for it. But I'm getting that recognition, and my name is out there, and the music is out there, and it was more important for your face to be seen around the country rather than just here in Rhode Island, which is not going to do anything for you, So it was a very important part of the process of getting to where I am right now. And
Mickey, you still there?
yep,
Yeah,
yes, I am.
there you go. Oh yeah, something happened to drop. You were saying it's a very important part of getting to where you are now.
So yeah, it was a very important part, and I said, basically to go from just singing on Whiskey Wednesdays to recording Buddy Cannon songs, having Buddy and Melanie sing on. They sang on four of the five last songs we recorded down in Nashville. He didn't have to go in there and sing on those albums, but he did, and he had fun doing it. So I mean, think about that. Country music can just do crazy things, and I think that's just crazy that a kid not a kid, but a guy that was singing on the internet ends up having a couple of legends singing on there on his songs. Like that's just cool.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's
Whiskey Wednesday has been great for me. I've had to tone it down a little bit though because sometimes I get a little rowdy with it.
oh, the brown liquor has a way of doing that. We
And and then you say what's on your mind.
yeah.
And,
Yeah, but
it's
it
not
is
always
delicious
beneficial.
though. But it's delicious. So in the end, at least you feel good about life.
I just get up and hit the delete button the next morning if I think I did something.
Well, let me get you out of here on this, Mickey. Tell us. So we know you've got new music. You've got a lot of new music coming down the pike on in the month of March. What other plans? Where can people look forward to seeing you? Do you have any plans to tour? Where can people? I know you've got a very active web presence on social media. Any live opportunities people can have to see you?
I'm gonna be in Illinois on Saturday night. This Saturday coming, I'll be playing for WOOZ Radio, St. Jude. Their St. Jude telethon. Um, I forget the name of the exact city, but it'll be on my Facebook page. And then in April, we're working with the veterans. I'll be down in Texas. I think it's Copacabana, Texas. Again, that'll be on Facebook. But Jerry Richardson is putting that on with Ryan Wilson. And quick story short is that when Chris Kyle was shot, he was with Chad Littlefield, which is Jerry's brother, and so we've been doing some shows for to help out their foundations and stuff, and try to keep Chad's name out there a little bit too, because he may have been overshadowed a little bit. Him and Chris are best friends, but obviously Chris Kyle's going to get everybody's going to be like, wow, Chris Kyle got murdered, and well, somebody else did too. Somebody else's kid was killed that day too. And so we just try to throw some love their way. So we're going to go down to Texas and do a show for the veterans down there.
All right, sounds good, Mickey.
And then after that, hopefully it just builds up. And, like I said, I see that path, and we get out there and start touring all the time.
Well, we need to get you come play in St. Louis, because there's a couple of good venues here that I'm sure would love to have you play. And anytime you want to come back with us, we actually record live in a music studio that is also a music venue. So,
well, when I come down that way, I'll definitely take you up on that, because I do come out to Missouri and the Midwest sometimes and do some runs out there.
All right, Mickey. Well, Mickey Lamantia, thank you so much. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, brother.